Ciao Bella! Welcome back to Reading with Bella. Today we are going to finish part one of the Phantasmagoria in Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky collection that I have here. Sorry, that was just my receipt. I always keep it just so I know where I bought it from. That's all. No worries. So, I'm just gonna go until I run out of time. Some people said they wanted some longer videos to listen to, and I'm just gonna go until I get to the point where I can't go anymore, and then we will be finished then. Sound good? All right. The three voices. The first voice. With hands tight clenched through matted hair, he crouched in trance of dumb despair. There came a breeze from out the air. It passed athwart the glooming flat. It fanned his forehead as he sat. It lightly bore away his hat. All to the feet of one who stood, like maid enchanted in a wood, frowning as darkly as she could. With huge umbrella, lank and brown, unerringly she pinned it down, right through the center of the crown. Then, with an old aspect, cold and grim, she, regardless of its battered rim, she took it up and gave it him. Awhile like one in dreams he stood, then faltered forth his gratitude in words just short of being rude. For it had lost its shape and shine, and it had cost him 4 and 9, and he was going out to dine. With grave indifference to his speech, fixing her eyes upon the beach, she said, Each gives two more than each. He could not answer yea or nay. He faltered, Gifts may pass away, yet knew not what he meant to say. If that be so, she straight replied, Each heart with each doth coincide. What boots it? For the world is wide. And he, not wishing to appear less wise, said, This material sphere is but a tributive idea. But when she asked him, Wherefore so? He felt his very whiskers glow, and frankly owned, I do not know. Well, like broad waves of golden grain, or sunlit hues on cloistered pane, his color came and went again. Pitying his obvious distress, yet with a tinge of bitterness, she said, The more exceeds, the less. A truth of such undoubted weight, he urged, and so extreme in date, it were superfluous to state. Roused into sudden passion, she in tone of cold malignity, To others, yes, but not to thee. But when she saw him quail and quake, and when he urged, For pity's sake, once more in gentle tones she spake. Thought in the mind doth still abide, that is by intellect supplied, and within that idea doth hide. And he that yearns the truth to know, still further inwardly may go, and find idea from notion flow. And thus the chain that sages sought is to a glorious circle wrought, for notion hath its source in thought. When he, with racked and whirling brain, feebly employed her to explain, she simply said it all again. Wrenched with agony intense he spake, neglecting sound and sense, and careless of all consequence. Mind, I believe, is essence and abstract, that is an accident, which we, that is to say, I meant. When, with quick breath and cheeks flushed, at length the speech was somewhat hushed, she looked at him, and he was crushed. It needed not, her calm replied. She fixed him with a stony eye, and he could neither fight nor fly, while she dissected word by word his speech, half guessed at and half heard, as might a cat a little bird. Then, having wholly overthrown his views, she stripped them to the bone, proceeded to unfold her own. So passed they on with even pace, yet gradually one might trace a shadow growing on his face. The second voice. They walked beside the wave-worn beach. Her tongue was very apt to teach, and now and then he did beseech. She would abate her dulcet tone, because the talk was all her own, and he was dull as any drone. She urged, No cheese is made of chalk, and ceaseless flowed her dreary talk, tuned to the footfall of a walk. Her voice was very full and rich, and when at length she asked him which, it mounted to its highest pitch. He a bewildered answer gave, drowned in the sullen moaning wave, lost in the echoes of the cave. He answered her he knew not what, like shaft from bow at random shot. He spoke, but she regarded not. She waited not for his reply, but with a downward leaden eye went on as if he were not by. Sound argument and grave defense, strange questions raised on why and whence, and weighted down with common sense. Shall man be man, and shall he miss of other thoughts, and no thought but this, harmonious dues of sober bliss? What boots it, shall his favored eye through towering nothingness descry this grisly phantom hurry by? And hear dumb shrieks that fill the air, see mouths that gape and eyes that stare, and redden in the dusky glare, that meadows breathing amber light, the darkness toppling from the height, the feathery train of granite night? Shall he grow gray among his peers, through the thick curtain of his tears, catch glimpses of his earlier years, and hear the sounds he knew of yore, old shuffling on the sanded floor, old knuckles tapping at the door? Yet still before him as he flies, one pallid form shall ever rise, embodying forth in glassy eyes a vision of a vanished good, low peering through the tangling wood, shall freeze the current of his blood. Still from each fact, with skill uncouth, and savage rapture like a tooth, she wrenched some slow, reluctant truth. Till like some silent water mill, when summer suns have dried the rill, she reached a full stop and was still. Dead calm succeeded to the fuss, as when the loaded omnibus has reached the railway terminus. When for the tumult of the street is heard the engine's stifled beat, the wary tread of porters' feet. With glance that ever sought the ground, she moved her lips without a sound, and every now and then she frowned. He gazed upon the sleeping sea, and joyed in its tranquillity, and in that silence dead, but she to muse a little space did seem. Then the echo of a dream harped back upon her threadbare theme. Still an attentive ear he lent, but could not fathom what she meant. She was not deep, nor eloquent. He marked a ripple on the sand, then even swaying of her hand was all that he could understand. He left her, and he turned aside. He sat and watched the coming tide across the shores so newly dried. He wondered at the waters clear, the breeze that whispers in his ear, the billows heaving far and near, and why he had so long preferred to hang upon her every word. In truth, he said, it was absurd. The third voice. Not long this transport held its place within a moment's space. Quick tears were raining down his face. His heart stood still, aghast with fear. A wordless voice, not far nor near, he seemed to hear and not to hear. Tears kindled not the dumb, doubtful spark. If so, why not? Of this remark, the bearings are profoundly dark. Her speech, he said, hath caused this pain. Easier I count it to explain the jargon of the howling main, or stretched beside some sedgy brook, to con with inexpensive look an unintelligible book. Low spake the voice within his head, in words imagined more than said, soundless as a ghost's intended tread. If thou art duller than before, why quittest thou the voice of lore? Why not endure, expecting more? Rather than that, he groaned aghast, I'd writhe in depths of cavern vast, some loathly vampire's rich repast. 'Twere hard, it answered, themes immense, to cope within the narrow fence that rings thy scant intelligence. Not so, he urged, nor once alone, but there was that within her tone that chilled me to the very bone. Her style was anything but clear, and most unpleasantly severe. Her epithets were very queer. And yet so grand were her replies, I could not choose but deem her wise. I did not dare to criticize, nor did I leave her till she went, so deep entangled argument that all my powers of thought were spent. A little whisper inly slid, yet truth is truth. You know you did. A little wink beneath the lid. And sickened with excess of dread, prone to the dust he bent his head, and lay like one 3/4 dead. Forth went the whisper like a breeze, left him amid the wondering trees, left him by no means at his ease. Once more he weltered in despair, with hands through denser matted hair, more tightly clenched than then they were there. When with bathed in dawn of living red, majestic frowned the mountain head. Tell me my fault, was all he said. When at high noon the blazing sky scorched in his head each haggard eye, then keenest rose his weary cry. And when at eve the unpitying sun smiled grimly on the solemn fun, alack, he said, what have I done? But saddest, darkest was the sight, when the cold grasp of leaden night dashed him to earth and held him tight. Tortured, unaided, and alone, thunders were silenced to his groan, bagpipes sweet music to its tone. What, ever thus, in dismal round, shall pain and mystery profound pursue me like a sleepless hound, with crimson dashed and eager jaws, me still in ignorance of the cause, unknowing what I break of laws? The whisper to his ear did seem like echo flow of silent stream, or shadow of forgotten dream. The whisper trembling in the wind, her fate with thine was intertwined, so spake it in his inner mind. Each orbed on each a baleful star, each proved the other's blight and bar. Each unto each were best most far. Yea, each to each was worse than foe. Thou, a scared dullard, gibbering low, and she, an avalanche of woe. Ooh. All right. Next we have Sighs and Tears. When on the sandy shore I sit beside the salt sea wave, and falling into a weeping fit because I dare not shave, a little whisper at my ear inquires the reason of my fear. I answer, if that ruffian Jones should recognize me here, he'd bellow out my name in tones offensive to the ear. He chafes me so on being stout, a thing that always puts me out. Ah me, I see him on the cliff. Farewell, farewell to hope, if he should look this way, and if he's got a telescope. To whatsoever place I flee, my odious rival follows me. For every night and everywhere I meet him out at dinner, and when I found some charming fair and vowed him to die or winner, the wretches, he's thin and I am stout, is sure to come and cut me out. The girls, just like them, all agree to praise J. Jones, Esquire. I ask them what on earth they see about him to admire. They cry, he is so sleek and slim, it's quite a treat just to look at him. They vanish in tobacco smoke, those visionary maids. I feel a sharp and sudden poke between my shoulder blades. Why, Brown, my boy, you're growing stout. I told you he would find me out. My growth is not your business, sir. No more it is, my boy, but if it is yours, as I infer, why, Brown, I give you joy. A man whose business prospers so is just the sort of man to know. It's hardly safe, though, talking here. I'd best get out of reach, for such a weight as yours, I fear, must shortly sink the beach. Insult me thus because I am stout. I vow I'll go and call him out. This next one is called Poeta fit non nascitur. That may not be how you say it. How shall I be a poet? How shall I write in rhyme? You told me once the very wish partook of the sublime. Then tell me how. Don't put me off with your another time. The old man smiled to see him, to hear his sudden sally. He liked the lad to speak his mind enthusiastically, and thought there is no humdrum in him, nor any shilly-shally. And would you be a poet before you've been to school? Ah, well, I hardly thought you so absolute a fool. First learn to be spasmodic, a very simple rule. For first you write a sentence, and then you chop it small, then mix the bits and sort them out, just as they chance to fall. The orders of the phrases makes no difference at all. Then if you'd be impressive, remember what I say, that abstract qualities begin with capitals away. The true, the good, the beautiful, those are the things that pay. Next, when you're describing a shape or sound or tint, don't say the matter plainly, but put it in a hint. And learn to look at all the things with a sort of mental squint. For instance, if I wish, sir, of mutton pies to tell, should I say dreams of fleecy flocks pent in a wheaten cell? Why, yes, the old man said, that phrase would answer very well. Then fourthly, there are epithets that suit with any word, as well as Harvey's reading sauce with fish or flesh or bird. Of these wild, lonely, weary, strange, are much to be preferred. And will it do, oh will it do, to take them in a lump, as the wild man went his weary way to strange a lonely pump? Nay, nay, you must not hastily to such conclusions jump. Such epithets like pepper give zest to what you write, and if you strew them sparely, they whet to the appetite. But if you lay them on too thick, you spoil the matter quite. Last, as to the arrangement, your reader you should show them must take what information they can get, and look for no immature disclosure of the drift and purpose of your poem. Therefore, to test their patience, how much they can endure, mention no places, names, or dates, and evermore be sure throughout the poem to be found consistently obscure. Fix first upon the limit to which it shall extend, then fill it up with padding, beg some of any friend. Your great sensation stanza you place towards the end. And what is a sensation, grandfather? Tell me, pray. I think I never heard the word so used before today. Be kind enough to mention one, exempli gratia. And the old man looked sadly across the garden lawn, where he and the dewdrop yet glittered in the dawn. He said, Go to the Adelphi and see the calling bon. The word is due to Boucicault. The theory is his, where life becomes a spasm and history a whiz. If that is not sensation, I do not know what is. Now try your hand, dear fancy, have lost its present glow, and then, his grandson added, we'll publish it, you know, green cloth, gold lettered at the back, in duodecimo. Then proudly smiled that old man to see the eager lad rush madly for his pen and ink, and for his blotting pad. But when he thought of publishing, his face grew stern and sad. Aww. Take that out before it falls again. All right, the next one is called Atalanta in Camden town. I 'twas here, on this spot, in that summer of yore, Atalanta did not vote my presence was a bore, nor reply to my tender's talk. She had heard all that nonsense before. She'd the brooch I had bought, and the necklace and sash on, and her heart, as I thought, was alive to my passion. And she droned upon her hair in the style that the empress had brought into fashion. I had to be the play with my pearl of a Peri, but for all I could say, she declared she was wary, that the place was so crowded and so hot, and she couldn't abide in that Dundreary. And then I thought, 'tis for me that she whines and she whimpers, and it soothed me to see those sensational simpers. And I said, this is scrumptious, a phrase I had learned from the Devonshire shrimpers. And I vowed 'twill be said when I'm a fortunate fellow, with the breakfast is spread, with the toppers are mellow, when the foam of the bride cake is white and the fierce orange blossoms are yellow. Oh, that languish yawn! Oh, those eloquent eyes! I was drunk with the dawn of a splendid surmise. I was stung by a look, I was slain by a tear, by a tempest of sighs. And I whisper, I guess the sweet secret thou keepest, and the dainty distress that thou wilfully weepest, and the question is license or bans, though undoubtedly bans are the cheapest. Then her white hand I clasped, and I kissed, and I crowned it, but she glared and she gasped and muttered, confound it! Or at least it was something like that, but the noise of the omnibus drowned it. All right, this is Phantasmagoria Part II. The Valley of the Shadow of Death is the first one. Hark, said the dying man, and sighed to that complaining tone, like sprite condemned each eventide to walk the world alone. At sunset, when the air is still, I hear it creep from yonder hill. It breathes upon me dead and chill a moment, and is gone. My son, it minds me of a day left half a life behind, that I have prayed to put away forever from my mind. But bitter memory will not die. It haunts my soul when none is nigh. I hear its whisper in the sigh of that complaining wind. And now in death my soul is fain to tell the tale of fear that hidden in my breast hath lain throughout many a weary year. Yet time would fail to utter all the evil spells that held me thrall, and thrust my life from fall to fall. Thou none needest not to hear. The spells that bound me with a chain, sin's stern behests to do, till pleasure's self invoked in vain, a heavy burden grew, till from my spirit's fevered eye, a hunting thing, I seemed to fly through the dark woods that underlie yon mountain range of blue. Deep in those woods I found a vale no sunlight visiteth, nor star nor wandering moonbeam pale, wherever never comes the breath of summer breeze there in mine ear. Even as I lingered half in fear, I hear a whisper cold and clear, this is the gate of death. Oh, bitter it is to abide in weariness alway, at dawn to sigh for eventide, at eventide for day. Thy noon hath fled, thy sun hath shone, the brightness of thy day is gone. What need to lag and linger on till life be cold and gray? Oh well, it said, beneath yon pool, in some still cavern deep, the fevered brain might slumber cool, the eyes forget to weep. Within the goblet's mystic rim are draughts of healing stored for him, whose heart is sick, whose sight is dim, who prayeth but to sleep. The evening breeze went moaning by like mourner for the dead, and stirred with shrill complaining sigh the tree-tops overhead. My guardian angel seemed to stand, and mutely with a waving hand, warned suddenly with sudden terror, all unmanned, I turned myself and fled. A cottage gate stood open wide, soft fell the dying ray on two fair children side by side that rested from their play. Together bent the earnest head, as ever and anon they read from one dear book the words they said, come back to me today. Like twin cascades on mountain stair, together wandered down the ripples of golden hair, the ripples of the brown. While through the tangled silken haze, blue eyes looked forth in eager gaze, more like starlight than gems that blaze about a monarch's crown. My son, there comes to each an hour when sinks the sprite's pride, when weary hands forget their power, the strokes of death to guide. In such a moment, warriors say, a word the panic rout may stay, a sudden change redeem the day, and turn the living tide. I could not see for blinding tears the glory of the west. A heavenly music filled mine ears, a heavenly peace my breast. Come unto me, all that labor unto me, yet heavy laden, come to me, and I will give you rest. The night drew onwards, thin and blue, the evening mists arise, to bathe the thirsty land in dew, and erst in paradise, while over silent field and town that deep blue vault of heaven looked down, not as of old an angry frown, but bright with angels' eyes. Blessed day! Then first I heard the voice that since have oft beguiled these eyes from tears, and bid rejoice this heart with anguish wild. Thy mother, boy, thou hast not known, so soon she left me here to moan, left me to weep and watch alone our one beloved child. Though parted from my aching sight, like homeward speeding dove, she passed into the perfect light that floods the world above. Yet our twin spirits, well I know, though one abide in pain below, love as in summers long ago, and evermore shall love. So with a glad and patient heart I move toward mine end. The streams that flow apart a while shall both in ocean blend. I dare not weep, I can but bless the love that pitied my distress, and let me in life's wilderness so sweet and true a friend. But if there be, oh if there be, a truth in what they say, that angel forms we cannot see go with us on our way, then surely she is with me here. I dimly felt her spirit near. The morning mists grow thin and clear, and death brings in the day. The next one is called Beatrice. In her eyes is the living light of a wanderer to earth. From a far celestial height, summers 5 are all the span, summers 5 since time began, to veil in mist of human night, a shining angel birth. Does an angel look from her eyes? Will she suddenly spring away and soar to her home in the skies? Beatrice, blessing and to blessed be. Beatrice, still as I gaze on thee, visions of two sweet maids arise, whose life was of yesterday. Of a Beatrice, pale and stern, with lips of a dumb despair, with innocent eyes that yearn for the young sweet hours of life, far from sorrows and far from strife, for happy summers that never return, when the world seemed good and fair. Of a Beatrice, glorious bright, of a sainted, ethereal maid, whose blue eyes are deep fountains of light, cheering the poet that broodeth apart, filling the gladness with his desolate heart, like the moon's when she shines through a cloudless night on a world of silence and shade. And the visions waver and faint, and the visions vanish away, that my fancy delighted to paint. She is here at my side, a living child, with glowing cheek and tresses wild, nor death pale martyr, nor radiant saint, yet stainless and bright as they. For I think if a grim wild beast were to come from his channel cave, from his jungle home in the east, stealthily creeping with bated breath, stealthily creeping with eyes of death, he would all forget his dream of feast, and crouch at her feet a slave. She would twine her hand in his mane, she would prattle in silvery tone, like the tinkle of summer rain, questioning him with her laughing eyes, questioning him with a glad surprise, till she caught from those fierce eyes again the love that lit her own. And be sure if a savage heart in a mask of human guise were to come on her here apart, bound for a dark and deadly deed, hurrying past with pitiless speed, he would suddenly falter and guiltily start at the glance of her pure blue eyes. Nay, be sure if an angel fair, a bright seraph undefiled, were to stoop from the trackless air, fain would she linger in glad amaze, lovingly linger to ponder and gaze, with a sister's love and a sister's care, upon the happy, innocent child. This next one is short. It's called Acrostic Lines to Lorina, Alice, and Edith. Little maidens, when you look on this little story book, reading with an attentive eye its enticing history, never think that hours of play are your only holiday, and that in a time of joy lessons serve but to annoy. If in any house you find children of a gentle mind, each the others helping ever, each the others vexing never, daily task and pastime daily, in their order taking gaily, then be very sure that they are having a life of holiday. This next one is a tad longer, and I'm just trying to keep an eye out for time. I think we can maybe get through a few more. Let's see. Just trying to see where this section might end. Okay. All right. The Path of Roses. In the dark silence of an ancient room, whose one tall window fronted to the west, where through laced tendrils of a hanging vine, the sunset glow was fading into night, sat a pale lady resting weary hands upon a great clasped volume, and her face within her hands. Not as in rest she bowed, but large heart tears went coursing down her cheek, and her low, panted sobs broke awfully upon the sleeping echoes of the night. Soon she unclasped the volume once again, and read the words in tone of agony, as in self-torture weeping she read. He crowns the glory of his race, he prayeth but in some fair place, to meet his foeman face to face, and battling for the true, the right, from ruddy dawn to purple night, to perish in midmost fight, where foes are fierce and weapons strong, where roars the battle loud and long, where blood is dropping in the throng. Still, with a dim and glazing eye, to watch the tide of victory, to hear in death the battle cry. Then gathered grandly to his grave, to rest among the true and brave, in holy ground where yew trees wave, where from church windows sculpted fair float up out upon the evening air the note of praise, the voice of prayer, where no vain marble mockery insults with loud and boastful lie the simple soldier's memory, where sometimes little children go and read in whispered accents slow the name of him who sleeps below. Her voice died out like one in dreams she sat. Alas, she sighed, for what can women do? Her life is aimless, her death unknown, hemmed in by social forms, she pines in vain. Man has his work, but what can women do? An answer came there from the creeping gloom that settled into night. Peace, for thy lot is other than a man's. His is a path of thorns, he beats them down, he faces death, he wrestles with despair. Thine is of roses to adorn and cheer his barren lot and hide thorns and flowers. She spake again, in bitter tones she spake, aye, as a toy, the puppet of an hour, or a fair posy newly plucked at morn, but flung aside and withered ere the night. And the answer came there from the creeping gloom that blackened into night. So shall thou be the lamp to light his path, what time the shades of sorrow close around. And so it seemed to her an awful light pierced through slowly the darkness, orbed and grew, until all passed away the ancient room, the sunlight dying through the trellised vine, the tall one window, all passed away, and she was standing on mighty hills. Beneath, around, and as far as the eye could see, squadron on squadron stretched opposing host, ranked as for battle, mute and motionless. Anon a distant thunder shook the ground, the tramp of horses, and the troops shot by, plunged headlong in that living sea of men, plunged to their death back from that fatal field. A scattering handful, fighting hard for life, broke through the serried lines, but as she gazed, they shrank and melt, and their forms grew thin, grew pale as ghosts when the first morning ray dawns from the east, the trumpet brazen blare died into silence, and the vision passed to a room where sick and dying lay, in long sad line, their brooded fear and pain. Darkness was there, the shadow of Azrael's wing. But there was no one ever, to and fro, moved with the light footfall. Purely calm her face, and those deep steadfast eyes that stared the gloom. Still as she went, she ministered to each, comfort and counsel, cooled the fevered brow with softest touch, and in the listening ear of the pale sufferer whispered words of peace. The dying warrior, gazing as she passed, clasped his thin hands and blessed her. Bless her too, thou didst the merciful of old. She prayed the lady, watching tearfully her gentle moving onward, till the night her veil had wholly, and the vision had passed. Then once again the awful whisper came. So in the darkest path of man's despair, where war and terror shake the troubled earth, lies woman's mission, with unblenching brow, to pass through scenes of anguish and affright, where men grow sick and tremble. Unto her all things are sanctified, for all are good. Nothing so mean but shall deserve her care, nothing so great but she may bear her part. No life is vain, each hath its place assigned. Do thy task, and leave the rest to heaven. And there was silence, but the lady made no answer, save when deeply breathed amen. And she arose in that darkened room, stood lonely as the spirit of the night, stood calm and fearless in the gathered night, and raised her eyes to heaven. There were tears upon her face, but her heart was peace, peace that the world nor gives nor takes away. This next one is called The Sailor's Wife. See, there are tears upon her face, tears newly shed and scarcely dried. Close in agonized embrace, she clasped the infant at her side. Peace dwells in those soft-lidded eyes, those parted lips that faintly smile. Peace, the foretaste of paradise, in heart too young for care or guile. No peace that mother's features wear, but quivering lip and knotted brow, and broken mutterings all declare the fearful dreams that haunt her now. The storm wind rushing through the sky wails from the depths of cloudy space, shrill, piercing as the seaman's cry when death and he are face to face. Familiar tones are in the gale, they ring upon her startled ear, and quick and low she pants the tale that tells of agony and fear. Still the phantom ship is nigh, with a vexed and lifelike motion, all beneath the angry sky, rocking on an angry ocean. Round the straining mast and shrouds, the throngs, the spirits of the storm, darkly seen through driving clouds, bend each gaunt and ghastly form. See, the good ship yields at last, dumbly yields and fights no more, driving in the frantic blast, headlong on that fatal shore. Hark! I hear her battered side with a low and sullen shock, dashed amid the foaming tide, full upon a sunken rock. His face shines out against the sky like a ghost so cold and white, with a dead despairing eye gazing through the gathered night. Is he watching through the dark, where a mocking ghostly hand points to yonder feeble spark glimmering from the distant land? See he, in this hour of dread, hearth and home and wife and child, loved ones who in summers fled, clung to him and wept and smiled. Reeling sink the fated bark to her tomb beneath the wave. Must he perish in the dark, not a hand stretched out to save? See the spirits, how they crowd, watching death with eyes that burn. Waves rush in, she shrieks aloud, ere her waking sense return. The storm is gone, the skies are clear. Hushed is the bitter cry of pain, the only sound that meets her ear, the heaving of the sullen main. Though heaviness endure the night, but joy shall come with break of day. She shuddered with strange delight, the fearful dream is passed away. She wakes, the grey dawn streaks the dark, with early song the corpses ring. Far off she hears the watchdog bark, a joyful bark of welcoming. This next is called Stolen Waters. The light was faint, and the soft air that breathed around the place. She was lithe and tall and fair, and with a wayward grace her queenly head she bare. With glowing cheek, with gleaming eye, she met me on the way. My spirit owned the witchery within her smile that lay. I followed her, I know not why. The trees were thick with many a fruit, the grass with many a flower. My soul was dead, my tongue was mute in that accursed hour. And in my dream with silvery voice she said, or seemed to say, youth is a season to rejoice. I could not choose but stay. I could not say her nay. She plucked a branch above her head with rarest fruitage laden. Drink of the juice, sir knight, she said, 'tis good for knight and maiden. Oh, blind mine eye that would not trace, and deaf mine ear that would not heed the mocking smile upon her face, the mocking voice of greed. I drank the juice, and straightway fell a fire within my brain. My soul within me seemed to melt in sweet delirious pain. Sweet is the stolen draught, she said. Has sweetness stint or measure? Pleasant the secret hoard of bread, what bars us from our pleasure? Yea, I take pleasure while we may, I heard myself replying, and in the red sunset far away my happier life was dying. My heart was sad, my voice was gay, and unawares, I knew not how, I kissed her dainty fingertips. I kissed her on the lily brow, I kissed her on the false lips. That burning kiss, I feel it now. True love gives true love of the best. Then take, I cried, my heart to thee. The very heart from my chest I plucked and gave it willingly. Her very heart she gave to me, then died the glory from the west. In the grey light I saw her face, and it was withered, old, and grey. The flowers were fading in their place, were fading with the fading day. Forth from her, like a hunted deer, through all that ghastly night I fled, and still behind me seemed to hear her fierce, unflagging tread, and scarce drew breath for fear. Yet marked I well how strangely seemed the heart within my breast to sleep. Silent it lay, or so I deemed, with a throb or a leap. For hers was now my heart, she said, the heart that once had been mine own, and in my breast I bore instead a cold, cold heart of stone. So grew the morning overhead. The sun shot downward through the trees, his old familiar flame. All ancient sounds upon the breeze from copse and meadow came, but I was not the same. They called me mad, I smile, I weep, uncaring how or why. Yea, when one's heart is laid asleep, what better than to die, so that the grave be dark and deep? To die? To die. Yet, methinks, I drink of life today, deep as thirsty traveller drinks a fountain by the way. My voice is sad, my heart is gay. When yester eve was on the wane, I heard a clear voice singing, and suddenly, like summer rain, my happier tears came springing. My human heart returned again. A rosy child sitting and singing in a garden fair, the joy of hearing, seeing, the simple joy of being, or twinning rosebuds in thy golden hair, that ripples free and wild. A sweet pale child, wearily looking to the purple west, waiting the great forever that suddenly shall sever the cruel chains that hold her from her rest, but earth joys unbeguiled. An angel child, gazing with living eyes on a dead face, the mortal from forsaken, that none may now awaken, that lieth painless, moveless in her place, as though in death she smiled. Be as a child, so shalt sing for very joy of breath, so shalt thou wait thy dying in holy transport lying, so pass rejoicing through the gate of death, in a garment undefiled. Then call me what they will, I know, that in my soul is glad. If this be madness, better so, far better to be mad, weeping or smiling as I go. For if I weep, it is that now I see deep a loss is mine, and feel how brightly round my brow the coronal might shine, had I but kept my early vow. And if I smile, it is that now I see the promise of the years, the garland waiting for my brow that must be won the tears, with pain, with death, I care not how. And there I will stop, because I'm about to run out of time on my phone. So I hope that you have enjoyed this reading. I hope that it has gotten you through your crocheting or your cleaning or your drive, whatever it may be, or even if you're just sitting and listening. I am a little over halfway finished with this. So whenever we do finish it, I do have another book lined up to read, and I hope that you enjoy that as well. We'll see you soon. Be the change you wish to see in the world, everyone. Ciao bella.